from the Energy Boutique with your energy forecast for Wednesday, April 20th. So welcome to the very first full day of Taurus season. Of course, we are grounded. We are back down to earth, very much in our physical bodies, focusing on our physical circumstances. The Tauran energy is definitely low and slow. Steady wins the race, and we are going to have a little bit of a tough adjustment to this energy, especially coming out of Aries season. If you haven't listened to the Taurus season astro forecast I put out, I would recommend that you go do that so that you have a better understanding on what it is that we are dealing with for the next month. So like I had mentioned in earlier forecasts, we come into Taurus season with the moon in Sagittarius, definitely lighting the mood a little bit, especially from that dark, probing, intense Scorpio shadow work that we did just a couple of days ago. And here today, we do have the moon in Sag for the majority of the day, but we'll go void of course around 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and move into Capricorn energy just minutes before we enter into Thursday. So this particular evening time is going to feel a little bit heavy, a little bit weighted. When we go from this flying high, big picture, optimistic, semi-extra energy from Sag to the earthy, grounded, practical, responsibility type of energy of Capricorn, that is definitely felt. And let me also just throw this at you. The sun in an earth sign, the moon in an earth sign, it is heavy. It is weighted. Now, does that necessarily mean a bad energy? No, but we are going to feel very much like we are stuck in these meat suits, stuck in these circumstances. And what happens is that if we fly too high while the moon is in Sag, if we bite off more than we can chew, if we overcommit, that pressure, that weight of the roles and responsibilities become a little bit too much when we settle into the Capricorn energy, because of course, Capricorn energy, highly karmic, highly responsible, wears and bears the weight of the world on one's shoulders, just looking to get logical and practical, creating some systems and structures to get this to-do list off of our list. And of course, just kind of see where it is that we need to take control of our physical circumstances in the here and now before we go dreaming up, concocting a brand new vision, a brand new dream for our future selves. So we are going to feel that shift. To make matters even more intense, we have 12 different aspects taking place here today, and all 12 of them involve this moon. Definitely an emotional day, okay? And definitely more, I'm going to say, emotionally burdening than some of the days that we've had over the last week or so. We are going to need a little bit of time to adjust to this earthy energy. So starting right out of the gate, and just keep in mind that, again, the moon is still in Sag for the majority of the aspects here today. And the moon in Sag right out of the gate is going to square, create a tension, create a conflict with Venus, the goddess of love and beauty and worth and pleasure, who, of course, is not only the ruler of this Tauran season, but is currently in a very, very special place to her in Piscean energy. The problem with her being in Piscean energy is that there is no boundaries, especially when it comes to love and emotions and our self-worth and our relationships. And because of that, the moon in Sag is definitely trying to, kind of gain that vision of moving forward, but it's going to require us to boss up and kind of implement and create a little bit more structure, a little bit more of those boundaries in our personal relationships, because some of the things that are going on in our relationship dynamics right now are not okay. We certainly don't want to build upon those broken, weak systems and structures. And especially with the new vision, the new dream that we're having about what it is that we want to manifest, we are going to have to do a little bit of work in our relationship dynamics in order to protect ourselves. The moon does bump into Mercury, who is in Taurus as well. The moon bumping into Mercury in this way is definitely going to see a activation point, a trigger in our physical realms. The moon is our heart space. Mercury is our head space. Our heart space in Sag just wants to be positive and optimistic, wants to focus on the silver linings, really just overly kind of elaborates, exaggerates on what could be, the possibilities of the future. The problem is that Mercury, ruler of the mental plane, is in Taurus, meaning we have to think logical and practical, focused on the here and now. We don't really have a lot of time or energy to be wasting, quote unquote, wasting on thinking about the future when there are so many elements in the here and now that don't make sense to us, that we do have to see through, that we do have to bring to light, we do have to communicate about. And therefore, this particular activation, this particular trigger, if you will, in our physical realms is really going to put our heart and our head at odds with one another. The moon is going to bump into Uranus, though. This is a positive aspect. Uranian energy is the great awakener. It likes to open up our minds to new ways of doing things, new possibilities, new avenues to follow moving forward. Uranian energy in Taurus at this time is affecting the shock system, the disruption in our routines, in our self-worth, in our relationships, in our money matters. Why? Because a lot of us are living fake illusions that we have created because of our ego avatar. And of course, the Great Awakening process doesn't really support us living in a false illusion anymore. We have to do what we can to become in alignment with our higher selves. And sometimes many of us know that that requires us making very dramatic changes to our physical realm, to our relationships. But many of us do not want to make that choice on our own. The universe literally has to shake us up and wake us up to the fact that maybe some elements need to be divinely scripted and removed from our lives in order for us to actually make the changes that we knew we had to make all along. It sounds like that is very much setting us up for the eclipse energy. We're about to run into the eclipse season at the end of the month. And eclipse energy is the wild card. Expect the unexpected. And eclipse energy is meant to kind of make us stand back and watch the universe sort out what we did not have the balls to sort out ourselves. So many of us look at that as pain and disappointment and loss, when realistically it's just the universe removing the elements that you didn't have the balls to do yourself. The moon goes ahead and bumps into the true node in not the nicest way, and this is likely still stemming off of the earlier activation and trigger in our physical realm where our heart and our head is not on the same page. The moon bumping into the true node at this time is really putting us at odds with our plans moving forward. We have moments where we feel like we have clarity, like we have vision, like we know the path forward. And then all of a sudden, we just are overwhelmed with confusion. We don't know left from right, up from down, black from white. We don't know what we're doing. That confusion is absolutely necessary in order for us to gain authentic clarity. Sometimes the clarity that we come up with is the ego's way of making sense of our physical realm and the circumstances that we're in, but of course does not factor in the element of magic, the element of soul and spirit and divine scripts. So we are going to see a little bit of a cluster F come into focus, especially with the confusion between our heart and our head, because some situations are unfolding that just kind of throw a wrench into the plans that we thought we had, into the path that we thought we were following. The moon goes ahead and sextiles Saturn. This is a beautiful, harmonious blending of energy with the Lord of Karma, who is in Aquarian energy, trying to show us where it is that the vision and the dream of us in a futuristic sense is very much needed to hold strong in our heart space, in our head space, in order for us to break it down in manageable pieces where we can actually do something to build the foundation, the structures that are needed in order to bridge the gap from where it is that we're at to where where it is that we want to be. The moon in Sag, of course, is very extra. It's thinking big. And sometimes if you're not careful and think too big, you will set yourself up for disappointment. The moon in Sag, being as extra as it is, being a little bit dramatic, biting off way more than any of us could chew, bumping into Saturn, who wants us to stay a little bit level-headed and practically minded in the process that it is going to take to actually bring some of these elements from our dream realm into our physical manifestation mode. And the moon bumping into Saturn in this way is both like the accordion effect, where we expand that accordion, we're thinking big, we're dreaming big, we're optimistic, we're, positive, we are just big vision. And then we get that restrictive energy. We're pulling that accordion in. That Saturn energy likes to hold us back and really test us to see whether or not we've learned what it is we have to learn in order to build the proper foundation right the first time, in order to house the dreams that we're looking to actually manifest. The moon bumps into Mercury once again. This time it is a good energy. It is a positive energy. So what are we gaining here? Well, it's likely Mercury's logical, practical sense focused on the here and now is kind of saying to our heart space, kind of jacked up on all of this hope and dream and faith that the Sag energy lends us. And Mercury's kind of saying, okay, so what if you just tone down your dream, your vision just a tad, and I step outside of the blinders that I have on from just looking at my physical realm and the physical circumstances that I have. And we meet somewheres in the middle where we can blend the want, need, and desire for our dreams and visions for our future sense to come true with the logical, practical reality of what is actually possible in the here and now. So essentially, we're getting our heart and head back on, I'm not going to say an even keel, but definitely on the same page. We're in the same book, we're in the same chapter, especially compared to the earlier aspect that had us very divided. This is when the moon, though, is going to square both Neptune and Jupiter. And let me just tell you, this is where we get some ants in our pants. We have to consider that these are the last aspects before the moon is going to go void. And these aren't the best aspects. Reason being, the square is a tension point. It is a conflict point. The moon, of course, our emotions, our unconscious selves, our heart space. Neptune and Jupiter, we still are riding off of this conjunction that we had just last week. It is a very powerful one, but at this particular aspect, this is where we get ants in our pants. This is where we become very discontent. Not only with our emotional standings, not only with our mental narrative, but with our circumstances and how slow it is going in order for us to actually see some progress take place. And again, we're in Tauran energy now. Everything is low and slow. So we become a little bit more agitated, I would say. And we feel the need to compensate for what it is that we're currently lacking, whether that's emotional peace or stability in our mind space, or just we're not seeing any kind of growth, any kind of improvement. So what do? We bite off more than we can chew. We overcommit. We dive into something else. Instead of us focusing on one thing and seeing it through, now we're jumping around like this ADHD pinball machine that we experienced while we were in Aries season. Again, fire energy. If you don't give it a direction, if you don't give it a focus, it just bounces around and creates all this anxiety, all this discontentment, all this restlessness. And at this particular point, what I will say is that the best way to deal with this energy is to provide yourself with some boundaries. Now, what are we putting boundaries on? First of all, we're putting boundaries on what it is that we're actually engaging with. Why? Because the energy right now doesn't really support initiating anything new. Instead, what it wants us to do is clean up the mess that we currently have going on. Many of us jump into projects or jump into ideas, jump into thoughts and conversations, and then leave them halfway, willy-nilly. Now, this is going to be a time where you're going to feel like you want to initiate something new. You're going to want to commit. You're going to want to make a decision, going to want to make a choice. Not ideal timing to do so. So we really do have to feel that, I'm going to say, inner conflict and inner disconnect between our emotions and our actions at this time, because what it is that we feel inspired and pushed to do isn't necessarily supported by the energy bringing that to life as of right now. Again, we're in Taurus season, the very beginnings of it. There is an adjustment period here before we can go and get down to the nitty gritty of actually building things, creating things, birthing things, bringing things to life. The moon does bump into the true node again, though, this time a positive aspect. So we are gaining a little bit of clarity, which is kind of strange, seeing that the moon is void of course at this particular time. The moon is void of course until we actually enter into the moon in Capricorn. And let me just say that we're wrapping the day up with an internal struggle, an obsession, if you will, a little bit of confusion, which naturally comes when the moon is void of course. But the moon bumping into the true node in this way just means that we recognize where it is that we've been getting ants in our pants, where we've been given an opportunity to kind of pull the reins back a bit. And I feel like we're going to do so, and that provides us a little bit more structure. That provides us a little bit more of a tunnel vision on what it is that we actually do have control over, what it is that does make sense to plan about. But then the moon goes ahead and bumps into Pluto and then Uranus, and then we bring up all of these negative ass narratives, speaking fear into our plans. Suddenly the optimistic, big vision, let's just, pluck the silver linings out of our bad experiences. Suddenly that gets washed away, and we find ourselves sitting in the shadows, sitting in the darkness. This is all a part of the transition of coming out of that light and bright, fiery, can do anything attitude of that fire energy, and getting a little bit more down to earth, a little bit more stable and sober, if you will, as we approach this Capricorn energy. So we are kind of ending the day off with a heavy head, a heavy heart, a heavy vibe, a heavy energy. And that is very, very typical with the transition of not only the moon being void, of course, but us entering into the moon being in Capricorn.